Bitcoin is digesting the gains that it's made over the years. So once we get a move, it'll be a big move and it'll take people by surprise.
You have AI, the tech stocks ripping, and then you have bond markets doing insane stuff.
The funding for this global fiat money economy is drying up. 40% of the S&P 500 valuation feeds back to AI and this AI revolution and Bitcoin revolution. The two are very much pari passu. They very much go together, and the individual can rock the legacy world by harnessing infinite intelligence at your fingertips.
Right now, it's a moatless industry. So we seize the opportunity.
Our objective is to try to build this citadel concept. It gets back to this idea where Bitcoin eventually destroys the state. You're seeing kind of the emergence of a whole new social contract between the government and the governed.
El Salvador went from being the murder capital of the world to Bitcoin country in just 4 years. But the next 4 years are going to be even bigger. Welcome back to the channel. If you'd like to help us grow, share this video with one person who needs to hear it. Today, I am joined by Max Keiser and Stacy Herbert, the couple who was pivotal in El Salvador's Bitcoin transformation. But Bitcoin was just the beginning. Their latest mission is putting El Salvador at the front of the global sovereign AI race. In this conversation, we get into how El Salvador partnered with Elon Musk and Google to put frontier AI in the hands of every citizen, how universal basic access beats out universal basic income, and how the convergence of Bitcoin and AI is fueling a new renaissance, attracting the world's top talent and building the new Florence in real time. Enjoy. All right, everybody, welcome back to the show. Thank you so much, Max and Stacy, for joining us on the Bitcoin News Channel. How are you doing today?
Cool.
It's nice to be here. Finally.
Finally, yes. So good. And we have lots to talk about because you guys, of course, are helping to rebuild the Renaissance in El Salvador. And we went from a safety story to a Bitcoin story. And now there is a new narrative being built on top of that. And that is the AI story. So today, Stacy, you reposted a tweet saying that El Salvador is becoming the Silicon Valley of Latin America. But I think you guys have a bigger vision. You guys are building the Florence of the world. So tell us, what's the difference between building a Silicon Valley and a Renaissance type civilization like Florence in the country you're in right now?
Wow. So if you're building a Renaissance, you're transforming not only history and culture, but mindsets, right? Silicon Valley doesn't really have a mindset. Bitcoin has a mindset, and so does what we're building in El Salvador. And the mindset is, beauty, it's legacy, it's history, it's believing like that the individual can change history. President Bukele has demonstrated that, of course, but the individual residents and citizens of El Salvador are doing the same. And it is always through the prism of beauty. And that's why the motto for the Bitcoin office, for example, is excellence only. And that is a motto that you can find on our X account, our Twitter handle. And it's to remind myself, Max, and our team. We have a team of like 20 young Salvadorans here, that every single thing we do, we should do it because you can just do anything in El Salvador. That's the mindset. But if you can just do anything, you should do it with beauty and grace and excellence. Because why not? Like, why not leave a beautiful mark on history?
Yeah, absolutely. So this idea of beauty leading the way is really key. And, I talk a lot about money being a shared aesthetic, and that is what money is, that money existed before the state. Bitcoin separates money from state. Bitcoin kind of destroys the state in a lot of ways. And we're seeing that play out here in El Salvador. The president speaks often about beauty. He talks about the public spaces being prioritized to beautify them. And we see that in downtown historic center of El Salvador. It's absolutely gorgeous. It's becoming the Times Square of Central America. It's attracting millions of visitors every year. And people come there because of the security, obviously, but also the aesthetic, the beauty, the warm vibe that you're getting from people that have been liberated from the fiat mindset of civil war. Civil war is a fiat war. Then you had the gang war. Gang war is a fiat mentality. So they've been liberated 40 years of this type of degradation by these forces that are fueled by the money printers and those who don't have an aesthetic, those who worship kind of junk and kind of a schmaltz, if you will. They don't have an aesthetic. And I think that connects it to Florence, right? Florence had an aesthetic. Once a couple of the artists of that period set up shop, it attracted other artists of that same mindset who are seeking absolute beauty. Also with Bitcoin, to me, it's the most beautiful object in the world. So it attracts that mindset as well. It's aesthetically perfect in a lot of ways. And it gets back to what is money. Money is a shared aesthetic that we've had since the beginning of humanity, since we were using shells as money all the way through gold and then all the way through Bitcoin. It's been a journey toward a more perfect aesthetic. And in El Salvador, with the president in office, he's taking that idea and he's building an entire society around it. And as you point out, this has led to now incursions and excursions and a journey into AI. And, 14 months ago, Stacy was talking to me about AI, and she noticed that a lot of the Bitcoiners and miners in particular, a lot of that compute was migrating over to AI. And this triggered really an investigation on her part into where this was all going. And so now 14 months later, we're doing incredible things in the AI as well, with AI.
Yeah, absolutely. And we are seeing you guys take a sort of an EAC approach towards AI, right? You're accelerationists. You want to dive headfirst into it, while there's a lot of other countries, such as in Europe and whatnot, that are much more hesitant and scared. Can you take us through your philosophy when it comes to AI, which is a sort of groundbreaking, earth-shattering technology that we're dealing with here?
Sure, we are the only EAC country, and it is EAC. It is accelerationist, effective accelerationism, which is the opposite of effective altruism, right? Effective accelerationism was birthed by Guillaume Verdon, who goes by the handle on X, I think it's Beth Jezos.
Yes.
And so he created that concept of EAC. And that's kind of how I came to AI. Obviously, everybody in the world can see the news headlines going through their X stream. And I did too. And I saw a lot of, as Max mentioned, I saw the Bitcoin miners starting to migrate their hash towards, HPC AI data centers. So I started to observe that. And then in my feed, I had more and more of, the EAC sorts that I was naturally following. And it's interesting that people like Palmer Luckey or Elon Musk are also, AI engineers and builders and technologists who also own Bitcoin. Or in the case of Palmer Luckey, he says he was mining Bitcoin a long time ago. So there's a natural overlap. So I was already naturally focused on that side of AI. And when it was 14 months ago that I actually passed our AI law here in El Salvador. I wrote the law over the previous 2 or 3 months. So I had been observing this for about over 2 years. And we started our AI policy with our partnership with NVIDIA. And they were the first company I contacted. And we went out there to Silicon Valley and started, signed an MOU to become part of their sovereign AI program. So I, just as running the Bitcoin office and working with the president on, promoting the country and attracting, the best and brightest from around the world, which I felt that this is why we first came up with the notion of Renaissance 2.0 in El Salvador, was that we knew from Bitcoin that the best and brightest were already attracted to Bitcoin. And it's a winning formula for a country like the new El Salvador, right? It had been a failed state up until President Bukele transformed the nation into a winning country. And so how to become even more winning, how to sustain the win, is to attract the best and brightest. So that's what we saw, it was so obvious to me looking at AI and the AI industry, the emergent, I guess just like Bitcoin had been there for really 20, 30 years in terms of the ideas that then birthed it. And then it was slow, and then hockey stick in terms of adoption. The same thing was going on with AI. I could see that the smartest people in the world were attracted to it. And so naturally, building a new El Salvador, you're like, well, how do we get those best and brightest people to come here? Like, we want those people. And so the EAC community was just a natural fit to our pre-existing reputation. And we crafted our regulations around that, this notion of people who want to build, iterate, and deploy. And that's what we position El Salvador as, is not only a sandbox for innovation, and quite a few other countries or jurisdictions try to position themselves as that, but uniquely, we're also a test bed for deployment. So you could deploy fast here, and it's not something that is easily done elsewhere. So look at our partnership with XAI, for example. They're building GrokTutor for our more than 1 million students, public school students in El Salvador. And I contacted them in the first week of August, 2025, so less than a year ago. By December, we had already announced our partnership, and then we were already building and we're piloting, just less than a year later. So think about that in terms of, do you think they would have ever been able to do that anywhere in the United States? Certainly not in Europe, but anywhere in the United States, even like a city or town, I think it would be quite difficult to do that. But here in El Salvador, you can deploy. And I think that's an important differentiator between us and other jurisdictions, is that we have the agility to do that because we have a very popular president. His latest poll ratings from international polling companies is 95%. So wow. I think people like what he's doing and they want more of it, because people like winning. Once you're like, if you've been a loser for 40, 50 years and then suddenly you're winning, it feels really good and you want more of it.
Yeah, the AI component is super interesting and it's so fast. And, we're in an interesting position to see and look at the two communities and contrast them a bit. So with Bitcoin, of course, it's all about hodling and you never really spend your Bitcoin. With the AI community, it's really all about spending. The amount of money being spent on compute on these racks of GPUs is in the billions and billions, and the companies' valuations are in the trillions. And there is a very interesting relationship between the two. I talked a little bit about this at the SOV AI Summit, which was held at the historic National Palace not too long ago, a few weeks ago. And for example, in the case of Bitcoin, you're converting energy into tokens, or Bitcoin as the hardest money ever created. With AI, you're converting energy into tokens, which is fueling this AI economy, agentic economy and revolution, which is all about infinite intelligence. That's kind of the goal, is that you're going to try to harness what I call prosaically or kind of metaphorically, the global unconscious, if you will. There's a end game in this, that the infinite intelligence that's possible will take humanity to a different place. It's a very interesting concept. It's talked about certainly in the EAC community, I think would say, talk in those terms, that there's infinite possibilities, and that's what makes they're excited about the technology. And so you have the similarity between the two, and of course, it all comes down to energy, and El Salvador is a great source of energy. We have hydro, we have solar, we have now geothermal. Geothermal is coming online more and more every day. You've got more than 170 volcanoes or so that can be used for geothermal energy. The president recently opened that up for private corporations to explore and to develop as geothermal energy. And geothermal is obviously clean energy, and there's ample room for creating lots of it here. So the possibilities for El Salvador becoming a go-to spot for energy and for the regulations. The regulations, getting back to Stacy's point about the law that was passed, the AI law, it's really the model for the world. A lot of people are coming around to the tenets of that law as being the best, the benchmark for other countries to look at, to how to attract AI and the industry to their countries. And so it's really, again, a reflection of the leadership we see at the top, President Bukele, and the folks that he has working with him. Obviously, in the Bitcoin office, Max and Stacy and others that come in. And our objective is to try to build something that has never, hasn't existed for a long time. And that is this citadel concept of the place to be that has the best of everything. And that is what we see evolving.
Yeah, and you guys have been fundamental in helping to write these laws to, of course, establish Bitcoin, the regulatory clarity there, and these AIs, and now robotics laws. So what did you guys ever imagine you'd be helping to write laws at one point in the future? And what is that like to actually be doing it?
Well, it's part of the you could just do things mindset, right? Basically, when I saw, so the EU AI Act was happening, I saw people like Elon Musk and other builders in the AI space in the United States complaining about the EU AI Act. And I saw that as an opportunity to position ourselves within the AI world, to announce to the world like who we wanted to come build in El Salvador. And if you've ever, heard of the EU AI Act or anything, basically, it adopts the mindset of fear, and we did the opposite. So Elon Musk also famously in an interview said something along the lines of, there's going to be amazing abundance thanks to AI, right? But there is a 10% chance we're all going to die. So we adopt the position that and as he also said, is like you must build for the 90% chance that it's all going to be amazing abundance. It's going to be the best of times, because why adopt a doom and gloom mindset when that's only going to create the outcome that you fear, right? So we want a positive outcome of abundance and human flourishing. And if you've ever used any of the tools, in AI, you could see that it does level the playing field very rapidly. It's like those early days of Bitcoin where it just totally leveled the playing field. And right now is genuinely this liberating moment where anybody can compete with multi-trillion-dollar companies. And you could just be one person with $5,000 to your name or $500 to your name, and you could be competing with them. Legitimately, you see these headlines now actually happening. They're not just like, what if, but these are, it's possible right now. Maybe that window of opportunity will close in the future as incumbents establish moats, but right now it's a moatless industry. And so we saw that and seized the opportunity. And it's all about the mindset. We believe that we could create the positive outcomes we believe these tools enable. And so when you look at our National AI Strategy Report that we published last week, we have maximizing national sovereignty. The three goals of the strategy is that to maximize national sovereignty, to maximize human flourishing, and to win the build. So those are all about the mindset.
Absolutely. And, the thing about the laws is that here in El Salvador, because the president is very dynamic and very popular, he's able to get laws through pretty quickly. And it all goes back actually to the Bitcoin law, which was the first law we worked on. And that was out of necessity because we saw that to help the country steer its way out of the altcoin, I'll use a polite term, the altcoin.
No, you're talking about the digital assets law.
The digital assets law. And so to help the country kind of make its way through without getting a lot of static and interference from all these other competing projects and smaller projects, because we felt that Bitcoin was the brand of Bitcoin, and the brand of Bitcoin post El Salvador was so great that any incremental gain that could have been gotten by having any other side project would not in any incremental way compete with, it would damage that Bitcoin country brand, and we came up with this Bitcoin country brand, and so that was kind of the beginning of really trying to formalize the idea that Bitcoin is money. Everything else was maybe a security and had to go through securities. But on this point where Stacy's making about how the agentic economy empowers individuals to take on institutions and take on the highest powers in the land. I love the story that just came out recently about a man who cured his dog. I don't know if you saw this, but the dog, I think, had some terminal illness. And he went into his AI and he developed a cure, essentially, using the massive power of AI, and helped his dog. So this is, I think, a great example of how the individual can rock the institutions and rock the legacy world by harnessing AI, which is, I think, misunderstood in that it is infinite intelligence at your fingertips.
I wanted to briefly interrupt today's interview to give a big shout out to our lead sponsor, Rhino Bitcoin. Rhino is the all-in-one Bitcoin super app built by Bitcoiners for Bitcoiners. Buy or sell instantly. Send sats anywhere on the Lightning Network. Withdraw straight to cold storage. Even turn sats into gift cards or link to a Casa multisig, all within one sleek interface. And Rhino is just warming up. Soon, you'll pay bills, borrow against your Bitcoin, and save for retirement, all without leaving the app. Download Rhino at rhinobitcoin.com or tap the link in the description below. Use promo code BitcoinNews and Rhino will drop you $10 of free Bitcoin into your account today. Secure your stack with Rhino Bitcoin and enjoy the rest of the video.
And we're moving from a period where coding is the primal skill to being more of a generalist, more of someone who can imagine, someone who can dream, someone who can think. So that's good for me because as a boomer, I bypassed the entire coding, years. I was waiting for this day when finally I would not need to code, and I would not have to learn to code. I can just use my brain and plug it into Claude and spin up entire parallel universes. And you can do it a lot easier here and have a great environment. I often say that Bitcoin is safe haven money and El Salvador is a safe haven country. So combining the two is really a very compelling reason to move to Bitcoin country. And we've all been saying for years, the 4.5 years we've been here, reaching out to people and say, move here, come here, experience El Salvador. And the more people that come, they understand, yes, and they end up moving here. And there's a great influx of folks moving here now. And the buildings are going up. Many, many, many buildings are being raised. So the sweet spot of growth is happening right now.
Yeah, absolutely. And it makes a lot of sense that you guys are optimists. I think the two of you are, and it comes through in the AI report and everything that you do. But job destruction is a real thing that we are going to see because of AI. And you highlight that it's amazing for individuals who are agentic and can go out there with ideas and try things out. But we also know from Bitcoin that there's a lot of people that don't want to take that responsibility, right? There's a lot of people who just like to sort of follow along and have some orders and complete them. So you say that you will project to create 100 to 125,000 jobs through AI in El Salvador through 2031. But what about the call center workers and the accountants and the everyday people that will see their jobs taken away because of this technological revolution?
We believe there will be a net job gain because of AI. History shows that every new technology creates new jobs, that we can't even imagine necessarily right now. Data center jobs, those didn't exist 5 years ago, right? Or 10 years ago. Those are new. Call center jobs, maybe they'll be disrupted. We do see massive disruption happening, but anybody who's used AI, okay, and I use AI a lot, and I'm sure you do too, Rob, has your workload gone up or down?
You work more. Yeah, absolutely.
Exactly. The output per human is going to increase. And that always leads to wealth, right? That's the path to wealth. So the wealthier we get, the more demand there's going to be for all sorts of things, and new jobs are going to be created, and the newly wealthy are going to, want more experiences. There might be some new, potential in tourism that we don't know about, or live entertainment, or all sorts of jobs that we just can't imagine. Maybe Max can say he has a great imagination, but for me, I just feel like it seems obvious just based on history that the same thing happened with the internet. There was an explosion of jobs. I saw somebody note that like the advent of the iPhone and these brilliant cameras on your phone, they didn't destroy the jobs of photographers. There are now more, according to the IRS and Treasury data, there are more photographers now in 2020, like last year, 2025, than there were in 2015 in the United States, earning an income from photography. How is that possible if the brilliant technology of these amazing like phone on cameras, like how did that not destroy those photographer jobs, right? They didn't. The technology just created more wealth, of course, in the United States, and therefore people wanted to hire a professional photographer to take photos of their events and things like that. So that's what happened with AI. You know it, that the iteration factor of being able to try so many things, films, like to iterate your film and see what this set might look like. My background is in Hollywood, and so there were a lot of doom-mongering headlines at first saying, "Oh, AI is going to replace everything," but you see easily that that's not the case. Okay, XAI is one of the biggest AI companies in the world, and yet X is they erected a iron slop dome, right? What? So they don't want AI slop because nobody likes AI slop. AI is never going to be more beautiful and amazing than humans, right? And I said this at my Sava AI Summit speech, is like, when you see a backflipping robot, people are like, wow, that's amazing. But it's human invention that made that robot do the backflips, right? That robot wouldn't be backflipping or breakdancing if it weren't for human invention. Like, it'll always rely on human invention. So that's also part of our AI strategy report, is everything we're doing here in El Salvador. It's so it's so Renaissance-like that we do not just think of like, oh, we'll just pass this law or we'll have a strategic Bitcoin reserve. We are always working on mindset and education and having that. We have a program with ARC Educate, for example, and what it teaches children as young as 7 is an innovation mindset. Right. So we're teaching these mindsets to people to use the tools that are available to them to liberate themselves and therefore all of humanity.
To follow up on a couple of points there. So chess has never been more popular, even though, remember, Big Blue conquered the grandmasters and people thought, oh, I guess no one's going to play chess anymore. But it's never been more popular, right? That's one that's often cited. In El Salvador, and this idea that jobs are lost due to AI, I think you have to put Bitcoin back into the equation to understand what's going on here, where the economy is going from the hamster wheel to the flywheel. So in the hamster wheel economy, everybody is chasing the fiat money dollar, and it keeps losing purchasing power. And it really destroys society in a lot of ways, because particularly if you graduate from college and you have a lot of debt, are you going to take the job you really want, or are you going to take the job you need to pay off that debt? So are you really getting satisfaction out of your life, or are you just paying back the bank the debt you took on to get through on this idea that this was the path toward happiness and prosperity in the world? But the flywheel economy is what we have here, an economy emerging. It's called the circular economy. It's the circular Bitcoin economy. It's happening first at Bitcoin Beach, where the Bitcoin revolution first started here in El Salvador. And it's migrating and proliferating to communities all over the country. And it's just, you're earning in Bitcoin, you're spending in Bitcoin, and you're saving in Bitcoin. So everything is Bitcoin. And when Bitcoin is your base layer, that means that you're never experiencing the hamster wheel economy. You're experiencing the flywheel economy, where everybody in the community's purchasing power is rising in unison. I also say this is another argument, or another kind of interesting, intriguing aspect of what's happening in El Salvador, is that you don't have gentrification as you would in other situations, other countries that are experiencing rapid growth, because Bitcoin is the base layer. So all boats are rising. The rising tide is lifting all boats. This is the first time this has ever happened. And so the satisfaction across every economic strata is equal in a lot of ways because of the Bitcoin presence in the economy, whether you're using it actively or not. The mindset is still there. So you have this potential for people to do what they really want to do. I really want to weave baskets. I really want to collect shells on the beach. I really want to be a prompter, for a major S&P 500 company. Whatever it is you want to do, if you're getting compensated in Bitcoin, your purchasing power is going to increase, and you're going to have that flywheel effect where what determines and your understanding of satisfaction and happiness will change along with this AI revolution and Bitcoin revolution. And the two are very much pari passu. They very much go together, in my view, which is, again, we talked about that at the Saab AI Summit here in El Salvador. So I think people are not taking on board how the fundamental nature of compensation and the relationship between someone who's working for an organization, how that's going to metamorphose when you under this new technological umbrella. And we will see it here in El Salvador, because El Salvador, as Stacy says many times, the reason why a lot of companies are moving here is that they can, and she can speak more on this, it's a test bed. So they can deploy, which is something that is unique almost to El Salvador, because we have this incredible vertical political structure where things can happen very quickly. But it's a key component in how the company is transforming is, yes, we can deploy.
Yeah, and being on X, as the three of us are, we think that the whole entire world is using AI every single day. Well, that's just not really the case. And there's a whole large swath of America that has no idea what's capable right now, right? But the cool thing that I've learned about El Salvador is that you guys are putting AI into the hands of the people with XAI, the tutor, and then Dr. SV, the medical app that you partner with Google to create, right? So talk about what are the average El Salvadoran experience with these AI apps and how are they using them?
Yeah, so if you look at Dr. SV here in El Salvador, it's a developing economy. So unlike the United States or Europe that are developed economies, so we're a developing economy, and there were many communities, very remote rural communities, for example, who did not have access at all, for some of them, to medical services, to world-class medical services. Now, we went overnight from a country where many did not have any access to medical advice to, as soon as you downloaded the app, it was instant access to top-tier medical advice. And so the population of El Salvador, if you think of their mindset, how far ahead it is of the rest of the world. Not only has El Salvador got a population in which a greater percentage of the population has owned Bitcoin than anywhere else in the world. And all the studies have shown that. I forget which Cornell University did a study on that. And then now it's the only national deployment of an AI-enabled app like this that showed and demonstrated to the world this instant access to whatever your income level is, or whether you're in a city or a rural area. And, around the world, even in the United States, there's a big problem with rural access to quality healthcare. We see that in North Carolina, where we have a house, and, we're up near Duke and UNC medical hospitals, the teaching hospitals. And, people from way in the rural parts of North Carolina have to travel up 3 hours to access quality healthcare in the cities. So it's a problem around the world. But now you have a much greater instant access to top quality medical advice available thanks to AI. So we're also rolling out, and this was announced at the Saab AI Summit. We have our permitting office. Some of your permits for, as Max mentioned, there are buildings going up everywhere. The transformation is not only, it's physical, it's cultural, it's historical, but everybody wants to build here. Everybody's moving here. Everybody wants to build here. Everybody wants to get in on ground zero as we're building the new El Salvador. And so the permitting process, again, it could take a long time in every country in the world. And a lot of it is, of course, just total inefficiency that you have to hand fill it out, all these like the same documents that everybody's doing. And then a human has to go through it and read it and blah, blah, blah. Now it's going to be all AI enabled. And whereas it might have taken, say, 5 weeks or 6 weeks, it's now going to take 5 or 6 minutes to get your permits versus the previous version. The same thing where we announced the Fiscalia. So if you're reporting a crime, you'll be able to, maintain communication with the police department through your WhatsApp, which everybody if you've ever been to Latin America, El Salvador is no exception. Everybody uses WhatsApp here. So you'll be able to do all the reporting through your WhatsApp using AI. So the social contract, I guess you can call it, the government services, a lot of people feel very distant and unrepresented because they, the access to the services your taxes pay for is often difficult because of the inefficiencies of a fiat and paper world, and just the human ability to process massive amounts of data. Even the bureaucrats don't know all the processes and the laws and the regulations. Whereas AI, obviously, the infinite intelligence aspect of it, that it could instantly access all that information and provide you such a better, interaction with the government services that you pay for.
Yeah, just listening to this conversation, it's sparked some ideas. So the word access is a very interesting word. So I'm thinking about UBI, Universal Basic Income, and people talking about that. There's going to be a huge job displacement. People are going to lose their jobs. Let's talk about UBI, Universal Basic Income, give everyone an income. And of course, the pushback on that is it de-incentivizes people to do stuff, to work, to become something, a higher goal in their lives, because they're getting this basic income and they kind of plateau, if you will. That's what's been proven in many times. This has been tried. So what about UBA, Universal Basic Access? Mm-hmm. So you have everybody in the community has complete and total access to this AI, to this infinite intelligence pool that they can, to Stacy's point, essentially bypass all the bureaucratic friction. It's anti-inertia. Inertia is a great enemy of productivity. You tend to, once you get into a stop, it's tough to get going again. So if the amount of energy it costs to get going again is virtually zero, so you never actually stop in this agentic world. You're always moving through it because it's essentially free in a lot of ways. If in fact the government provides universal basic access, which they can do, particularly in El Salvador, because their cost of volcanic and geothermal energy is constantly dropping, and their ability to attract the best AI companies and architects and entrepreneurs is increasing by the day because they have the ability to deploy, which is something you don't find in other countries, and it's attracting the best and the brightest. This is going to be a whole different mindset. Again, it gets back to this idea where Bitcoin eventually destroys the state. Bitcoin eventually destroys a centralized government. I think, in my view, kind of my opinion, you're seeing kind of the emergence of a whole new social contract between the government and the governed. And so that's very exciting. And, these technological revolutions happen quite often throughout history, and there's huge changes that occur. And but thinking of it more kind of creatively, I can see how this could play into the ability to lift up pretty much everybody simultaneously, again, with that aesthetic. If the aesthetic is pure, you're going to always be in the right direction. And aesthetics are not, it's not subjective. Beauty is not in the eye of the beholder. It's hard-coded in the DNA. What is beautiful, we intrinsically would know. And if we follow that arrow, that vector, and we can do so universally and with great precision and ease in an agentic world with Bitcoin as the base layer, the possibilities are quite fascinating and beautiful.
Mm. So now let's go over to the talent that you guys have brought over to the country, or just El Salvador has attracted itself. This has been a big initiative for you guys from the very beginning. As soon as you moved down there, you've said Bitcoiners come from around the world. Now you've got AI talent, tech talent coming. What's been the difference in the talent that came a couple of years ago compared to now? And who are the best candidates to come in 2026?
The Renaissance men and women out there, right? So, people, there used to be a lot of talk before in the Bitcoin community about beauty. And, Safety Namus also wrote that book about the fiat standard and how it creates ugly art and ugly buildings. Remember, this used to be something that was really talked about before, the last 2 or 3 years, in the US, more in the Bitcoin community, more of the conversation is around, Wall Street products and yield products, and I think it's probably not coincidental that the fact is that we now don't talk about that so much anymore in the Bitcoin community. Only in El Salvador do we talk about it. If you come to Bitcoin Histórico, we're by the way, we're having our second annual Bitcoin Histórico on the 11th and 12th of November. And you can go to bitcoinhistorico.com to learn more about that and get tickets. Safety Namus will be there speaking. But this notion of beauty is, really important. I kind of lost track of what I was answering, what question I was answering.
Attracting talent.
Oh, attracting talent. Well, that already attracts. When you position your country and market your country and promote your country as a place that you're interested only in the best and brightest, and you're interested in a specific sort of person, like we were very vocal about wanting Bitcoiners, for example, and we weren't so interested in the altcoiners of any of the 25 million or 35 million or 40, 50 million, whatever it is today. I have not looked in a few months. So the last I looked, like 4 months ago, it was 25 million coins. So I'm sure it's about 50, 60, 70 million by now. So you want to limit, you don't want to be surrounded by, lesser quality people, right? You want to have the best and the brightest, because that's how Florence is still remembered today. They didn't have a whole bunch of AI slot
altcoiners.
Yeah. They didn't have altcoiners. They didn't have B-list artists or architects, or they had the best and the brightest, obviously, right? So this is what we want. We want to, like, if we're going to build a new El Salvador, why go through all that effort and just create schlock, right? Why create a Vegas when you can create a Florence instead? And it's not that much more effort. I learned this, by the way, in working in Hollywood. You could work on a straight to video film, as it used to be back then, or you could work on a movie with high production qualities and A-list stars and directors. A lot of them are A-list for a reason, because they are just much better. They're much better actors. They're much better on camera. They have a beauty and a magic on camera. Maybe off camera, they might not be like that, but something happens in front of a camera for some of these actors and actresses. They're better directors, better, the A-list, you're working just as hard to create a schlocky film, and what do you have to show for a result? Maybe you might get a Razzie Award if it's so bad, and like it becomes a cult classic because it's super horrible. And I've worked on some of those, but the same with the country. So if we're building a new El Salvador, why not attract the best? And that's what we're doing. So we have we have our events, we have our conferences. That is a good reason to invite, the best and brightest from around the world to come and check out the country. What we have found is that anytime we invite people here, almost universally, they say they fall in love with the country and they want to return. And that's exactly what we want. And we want them to be ambassadors for El Salvador, basically go around the world and say, wow, you have to go check out El Salvador, or even move here. And that's the ultimate validation of all the things we're doing. We have our education program, so we bring the best and brightest around the world to come teach our best and brightest. We have, we're now getting other conferences as well, like MIT Tech Reviews, MTech AI conference is coming to El Salvador, the full licensed one. Like, this is top tier AI conference coming to El Salvador exactly a week after the Bitcoin Histórico conference. So it's a cycle, it's a feedback loop, of course, because if you keep on having the best and brightest showing up in El Salvador, then it falls in the Twitter stream of the best and brightest who see them and say, that like super interesting guy is in El Salvador doing super interesting things. Well, those photos look amazing. Well, I'm going to go check it out. So, and then we are introducing a passport program. So we will be giving away 5,000 free passport citizenship to 5,000 really cool, interesting, exceptional people. And if you're extraordinary, I think you should apply. And it's the first, I think, probably since the Renaissance days, since Florence, that that you actually have a category for philosophers. Like, what other country has that, right? This is all about mindset and ideas and innovation in such a profound way, and beauty in such a profound way. So no other country is like this. And I think you're going to see it continue to get better and better.
Yeah, these free passports that are going to be given away, it's really remarkable. It's not about box checking that you qualify or don't qualify. It's anyone can apply, and anybody can end up getting one if it looks like they can add according into one of these categories. One is philosophy, one is art, one is science, one is technology, et cetera. So we want a nice mix. We're building kind of a beautiful mix of talent. And that's one way to do it. One of the experiences people have when they come to El Salvador is that they come, they enjoy it. There's something in the air. They tell their friends about it. But the real moment of clarity comes when they step off the plane back in their home country. So what happens then is there's a sudden feeling of, you know what? I've only been back for 5 minutes and I miss El Salvador. In other words, there's the starkness between El Salvador and any other country is palpable and real. And the visitors who go back, at first it's just they feel something. They can't put their finger on it yet. They just feel a certain emptiness and a certain existential kind of vacantness.
They become French, the existential crisis, right? I had it when we first came here, and then before we officially moved here. Like, I would have just profound sadness when we were taking off. Once I saw El Salvador leaving and below me on the plane, I had a lot of, I felt very sad, because when you're surrounded by momentum, and more optimistic momentum, like it feels really good. It feels life affirming. It feels like human flourishing. It feels like beauty. It feels like good times. Like, you're in that moment, and these cycles of history are decades long, but you're at those first few months and years of the strong men creating the good times, right? El Salvador had very bad times for a long time, and those bad times created the strong men like President Bukele have created these good times. So you're in those first days, and when was the last time the United States was in it? It was like, World War II sort of era. So we've never, most people watching this wouldn't have ever experienced it in their own real life. But when you're there, it feels like really amazing. But we're not just we're going to compound. We're going to try to sustain those good times for many decades to come by that mindset, right? Yeah. Like that proof of work mindset and that proof of humanity and innovation. Like if we keep on staying human and staying true to the proof of work mindset and first principles, like we can keep this going for many, many generations to come. Right. So you have that moment, you step off the plane and you're feeling a bit existentially French, crise de foi, that's often in France. I'm having a crise de foi, which is the excuse for everything. I can't go to work. I have a crise de foi.
I'm sorry, I'm late. I have a crise de foie, which is a crisis of the liver, of course. And so then they come back and they have another excellent time in El Salvador, and they return to their home country, and they're like, oh my God, that feeling I had last time, it got worse when I returned. And a lot of those people just say, hey, I'm going to move to El Salvador. Another interesting case of people, during COVID, obviously, you had a huge migration from Canada, from Australia, because the political situation was becoming very difficult. And now we're seeing a lot of people actually talk about France. A lot of people from France are now moving to El Salvador because of the hijackings and that are the kidnappings that are going on in France. A friend of ours just had the third attempt at a kidnapping. They're like, the heck with it. I'm moving to El Salvador. So the security model of El Salvador is incredibly compelling. You can go to any square inch of the entire country and feel entirely safe. Other countries, they have safe areas, but they have a lot of areas you would never go to. Here, every single square inch is completely safe, which I think are remarkable. And then you're adding, according to the president's latest communication, he's talking about really putting in an excellence in terms of the rule of law, right? He's redoing the entire legal structure, soup to nuts, and every single kind of layer of what is forms of government, he's re-architecting and redoing, starting from security and working his way through every single aspect of government to just bring it up to a standard of excellence that would be world-class and the best in the world.
So let's talk about the man himself. None of this really would have been possible without Bukele and the changes that he brought to the country. You guys have been fortunate enough to know him personally for years now. And over the last couple of years, his international presence has grown quite the amount, right? Whether he's meeting with Trump or have different leaders from different countries coming to El Salvador itself. So over the last 3-4 years of you knowing President Bukele, how has he changed and how has he reacted to the growth and presence on the international stage?
Well, he's like an old-fashioned, great man of history. So there's a sort of constancy to him. He has all that, the classic, leadership qualities of just, a confidence, calmness, a certainty in his vision. He has a clear vision. I might be a little bit more, hysterical sometimes and a drama queen, but he's like no drama. He just builds. He has so much confidence in his vision, but also his people. He has an amazing way of being a leader. Just like, when we talk about Florence, some people might focus on Medici's wealth, but obviously the Medici family, there were maybe one or two of them who were great leaders that they inspired. Whatever it is that happened there is a magical moment and transformative, not only for Florence, of course, but for all of the world. All of humanity changed because of his leadership to attract all those people, to the best and brightest to come there and build something extraordinary. And I think President Bukele has those same sort of qualities. Of course, those sort of men tend to also invite some, jealousy. Some people don't like to see that certainty. They use bad words about it. Certainly, Medici, Medici, for example, stood up to the Vatican, and the Vatican excommunicated the entirety of Florence, which was a powerful, powerful, powerful tool at that time. But think about how extraordinary he must have been that tens of thousands of people stood with him and were willing to be excommunicated, which doesn't sound like much for us in the modern era. But back then, hundreds of years ago, this was everything. This was like it was worse than being debanked, right? We have that same sort of leadership quality here. And I know it's, the modern era has kind of, degraded this notion of seeking excellence, like to want beauty or excellence or to be a great leader is kind of, treated with disrespect. It's not something we strive for. But when you do have a country with it, man, it's extraordinary. And if you want all those beauty and excellence and optimism and momentum and a destination of glorious ideas where you can just do things, then El Salvador is the place you want to be. And I think President Bukele, he inspires that. Just like Medici he's not the one that painted all these masterpieces or built these amazing buildings. Some of them, I guess he did, pay the artists to do that, or pay the architects to build these masterpieces. But the same with El Salvador. Is President Bukele is inspiring. It's just this amazing mix of people. And by the way, in terms of innovation and tech, I think if you look at most of the technology that we see around us, including all of AI, came from these sort of national missions rather than private companies just building cool things. So you had Bell Labs, you had the Manhattan Project, you had the Apollo program. This, like, all of the technologies that we have around us that advanced human civilization, so much of them came out of these sort of national mission that you feel in El Salvador, is that everybody here knows how horrible the times were and how one man has changed the course of history for them. And they're all seizing it and wanting the new El Salvador to keep winning, to seize this moment, to continue the win. And you feel that. So that's why you're seeing innovation in governance, for example. You see us leading the way, pioneering the way in AI, where, I know when we go to GTC, when we go to these conferences, when we talk to multi-trillion-dollar companies, we're seen as President Bukele is seen like a founder, right? He's seen by these founder geniuses as the same. So I think you're just going to continue seeing us win.
Yeah, well, the first thing, you ask yourself when you meet the president is who would take on this job of leading the murder capital of the world, a total failed state. Who would do this? And you quickly understand that it's somebody who sees a different outcome, a different reality, and has the ability and the imagination to see that different reality. I'm always surprised by the president's attention to detail and how much he comprehensively knows about every little thing in the entire country that can be improved, and just by increasing, let's say, the requirement, the amount of time people can stay on a tourist visa from 90 to 180 days, for example. It's an easy thing to do, but you immediately increase your tourist buck, with a signature on a piece of paper, and just a lot of things that just happen every single day that just move the ball forward. And I often think of it really as El Salvador as this beautiful Swiss watch that was smashed, and it's there on the road and it's covered in mud. And then here comes President Bukele, and he looks down and he sees it and he says, I can bring that back. I can restore that to its finest state. But it requires incredible finesse, incredible detail. Every single spring, every single gear has to be removed, polished, reset, re-architect, put back in. And this is what we're seeing happening: the emergence of this jewel in Central America. And now it's becoming the model for all of the region. It's becoming a model for the world. And again, aesthetics. He started off with something. He saw the beauty. It's like seeing Michelangelo, seeing David in the rock. The story goes, he found the rock for the David in a dump. It was cast aside, that stone. It was ready to, nobody wanted it. He saw David in it. And then he went back to his workshop and he started tapping away and revealed it. And this is what the president has done. He's tapping away with his chisel and his hammer every day, tick, 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 and revealing this incredible country with this being powered by the twin engines of Bitcoin, AI, and it's attracting, like Florence, a huge influx of people who can appreciate the aesthetics this is what's going on.
I also think he's like a man of faith in terms of having, well, faith in God, but also faith in himself and faith in his people. And that's not something that you see in a very cynical world. You don't see that often. There's so much cynicism in the modern fiat world, and you don't see that in him. He's not cynical like that. He has faith in himself and the people. And you could see that in a statement he made, which is what really attracted us to moving to El Salvador. And I do think it is like his essence. When he was, I think it was when he was running for office the first time in 2018 for the 2019, taking office in 2019, he said, where El Salvador is going is to the place we want to be. And think about, like, El Salvador was a failed state. It's like when you read those, comments and messages from Hal Finney when Bitcoin was like 5 days old, and he's like talking about where Bitcoin is going, and you're like, what are you, a madman? Like, this is just like some digits on a piece of paper. Like this, whatever you're talking about, this Bitcoin, that's not going to replace all of global, currency and monetary money. El Salvador is like that. We have a guy who has extreme faith in the vision that he has laid out, and the people, he has faith in the people to let him lead them there. That, like he has said in his own speech to the nation, like on September 15, 2023, he said, look, I delivered you this peace. We finally have peace after all these decades, and we're no longer a failed state. Now it's up to you. You have to go out there and start building and start believing in what we're building. So go out there and build and do and create and all that stuff.
Definitely an unbelievable experience meeting Salvadoran people. They're warm, generous people who, and of course, when we first arrived, the very first time, we expected to meet a population that was sheltering at home and petrified because of all the incredible violence going on. But there was a complete opposite. Everyone was the warmest, most inviting group of folks we've ever met. They took us in, and that's another thing people talk about when they come here, is just how nice everybody is. And that's just, again, a product of faith and a belief. And it's kind of the feeling that now is their time.
Yeah. Well, on a personal note, I've been watching you two since like 2011. I was living in Shanghai at the time, and you guys were on RT, and you're talking about buy silver and crash JP Morgan. And I'll never forget it, of course. I was a young buck back then. And now through my Bitcoin journey, you've been there as well. But we got to talk about markets to end out this conversation. Stock market is at all-time highs, and now we've got the bond market screaming with yields not seen for a very long time. No. And Bitcoin is sort of just wallowing there in the high 70s. Is this a Bitcoin bear market? Where's Bitcoin going? And when's the next new all-time high?
Wow, this is where so many people keep on coming up to us on the beach and Bitcoin Beach lately saying, where's the Keiser report? We need it, because this is the sort of global macro environment where definitely Keiser report is needed, where all the signals, you have AI, the tech stocks like ripping, and then you have bond markets doing insane stuff. Like this is the yield soaring and bonds crashing. Like this is where Max Keiser comes in.
Okay, I'll happily jump in. What we've been saying on Keiser Report for years and years. We made a film about this when we were making films for Al Jazeera English back. If you know our work from 2011, we did some films for them, and it was about the yen carry trade and the Swiss franc carry trade. So the yen has been the funding currency for the global economy for decades because it's the cheapest, lowest yielding currency in the world. So you can borrow in yen and invest in another currency somewhere else in the world and get a positive carry, positive yield. And as long as rates in Japan were low, and I mean like 0.001 low, very, very low, this kind of fueled a global, almost you could say it was part of the basis of globalization in a lot of ways, was access to cheap money and then the interconnected nature of all of these things. Well, the yen interest rates in Japan are now I just think it's at 4%, up from 0.001. So that yen carry trade is under extreme stress. So that means the funding for this global fiat money economy that's been going on in the globe now has the highest indebtedness ever, right? So is drying up. So if this reaches a state where you have an unwinding, like 2007, 2008, you had a global credit freeze, and it required the folks in Washington to make a lot of law changes and rule changes and emergency actions to re-liquefy the economy. That would obviously be a pretty seismic event and cause a lot of displacement. So in that mix, you have the stock market is really feeding on a lot of I think 40% of the S&P 500 valuation feeds back to AI and the companies that are in AI. So there's an incredible boom there. So that's something to watch, obviously. And then, of course, Bitcoin is digesting the gains that it's made over the years. I mean, the annual rate of return on Bitcoin is still very high. So if it goes through sideways, the pricing action, as Peter Lynch, famous money manager, said, most moves in stocks happen over a very concentrated period of time. And most of the time, you're just kind of waiting. So once we get a move, it'll be a concentrated move. It'll be a big move, and it'll take people by surprise. And that's the way these things work. So that's a quick summary.
I'll take it. Yes, I do think that Bitcoin is coiled and ready to explode, probably when most people least expect it. Well, you two, I will let you get back to your day job of directing a country towards Bitcoin prosperity and AI intelligence explosion. So thank you so much for joining, and I hope to have you back soon.
And make sure people go to bitcoinhistorico.com, buy tickets, and come check it out. Like, you'll see a lot of Bitcoiners. So if you feel only safe around Bitcoiners, we'll have a lot of them here on 11th and 12th of November. And the week after, we have a big AI conference, and you're welcome to attend that as well. And a surf competition down at La Cajita. You have to come down and try the Cocomax. It's the drink that made El Salvador famous. It put us on the map. Yeah, it's Cocomax. I invented Cocomax, and it's the #1 selling drink, really, at the La Cajita restaurant on Bitcoin Beach. So it's a fantastic spot. If you're in town, come to La Cajita Kitchen in Bitcoin Beach in El Zonte and order a Cocomax, and you can watch the sunset along with some other folks in El Zonte and the surfers, and it's a beautiful, picturesque spot.
Yes, I highly recommend El Salvador in November. If you've never been, that is the month to go. And also respect those waves. They're a lot more serious than they might look from the beach. Yes. Absolutely. True.
Yeah. Thank you for having us on.
Thanks.
Cheers, guys. Bye-bye. Thanks for making it to the end of the video. If you could drop a like and a share, it would help in our mission to accelerate adoption. If you're looking for more Bitcoin signal, join over 10,000 readers of our newsletter, Bitcoin News Weekly. Every Monday morning, we send out the biggest headlines of Bitcoin to keep you in the know in under 5 minutes. Links below in the description. Then come hang with us live every Monday at 11 a.m. Eastern. We break it all down live on stream with a new guest, and you can add your 2 cents in the chat. See you next week.